Jefferson City is the capital of Missouri. Population roughly 43,000, the ninth least populous state capital in the country. Interstate highways bypass it entirely. Most Missourians who do not work for the government have never spent significant time there. And yet, the history within walking distance of that small-town riverfront is genuinely extraordinary. The man who assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. escaped from a prison here, hidden in a bread box. A future heavyweight champion learned to fight in that same prison's gym. One of the most feared anarchists in American history was held in its women's ward. Time magazine once called those 47 acres the bloodiest in America. The capital nobody talks about has been quietly producing history for 200 years. Fact 1. Jefferson City almost was not called Jefferson City. The legislature seriously considered naming it Missouriopolis. When the new state legislature debated what to call the capital in 1821, Missouriopolis was an actual proposal on the table. They eventually chose Jefferson City in honor of Thomas Jefferson, who was still alive at the time. Jefferson did not die until 1826. The city was named after a living former president, which was unusual enough, but at least they did not go with Missouriopolis. Fact 2. Jefferson City was not a town when it was chosen to be the state capital. It was a trading post in the wilderness. The site was selected in 1821 specifically because it sat near the geographic center of the new state. There was almost nothing there. A small landing on the south bank of the Missouri River called Loman's Landing, a handful of settlers, and a lot of trees. The legislature committed to building a capital city from scratch in an empty spot because no existing town seemed right. It was the first time in American history that a state had invented a city solely to serve as its seat of government. Fact 3. The Missouri State Penitentiary was deliberately built in Jefferson City to help the city keep the capital. In the early 1820s, Jefferson City's status as the state capital was not secure. Other towns were lobbying for the designation. Governor John Miller's solution was to anchor the capital with government infrastructure, specifically a prison. If the state built its main penitentiary there, the city would have a permanent institutional reason to exist. The legislature approved it, and the prison opened in 1836, the same month as the fall of the Alamo in Texas. Fact 4. The Missouri State Penitentiary was the oldest continuously operating prison west of the Mississippi River. It operated from 1836 to 2004 for 168 years. When it opened, Andrew Jackson was in his second term. When it closed, George W. Bush was in his first. The prison was already 100 years old when Alcatraz opened in 1934. It held its first inmate in a facility that had one guard, one warden, 15 prisoners, and a brick-making operation. It ended with 1,355 inmates being transferred to the new facility down the road. Fact 5. Time magazine called the Missouri State Penitentiary the bloodiest 47 acres in America. The designation came in 1967, referencing the extraordinary level of violence on the grounds from 1963 to 1964. It was not an exaggeration offered for dramatic effect. The prison had a documented record of assaults, murders, and brutality that made it one of the most feared correctional facilities in the country. Between riots, weapon making, and systematic violence between inmates and staff, Jefferson City's most prominent institution earned that label honestly. Fact 6. In 1954, a prison riot at the Missouri State Penitentiary required 500 law enforcement officers to contain. 2 inmates faked illness to lure guards, overpowered them, stole the keys, and began releasing prisoners block by block. By the time order collapsed, the Missouri Highway Patrol, the Missouri National Guard, and police departments from Jefferson City, St. Louis, and Kansas City had all been called in. 4 inmates were killed, 29 injured, and 1 inmate attempted suicide. Residents of Jefferson City were so frightened of a mass escape that many spent the night on their front porches, armed with shotguns. Fact 7. James Earl Ray, the man who assassinated Martin Luther King Jr., escaped from the Missouri State Penitentiary in a bread box. Ray had been sentenced to 20 years for robbing a grocery store in St. Louis. After 2 failed escape attempts, he reported early to his job in the prison bakery in April 1967. He climbed inside a large wooden box used to ship bread and was driven out the prison gates on a delivery truck. 11 months later, on April 4th, 1968, he shot and killed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. He remains on escape status in Missouri Department of Corrections records to this day. Fact 8. Pretty Boy Floyd served time in the Missouri State Penitentiary in the late 1920s. Charles Arthur Floyd was incarcerated there for a payroll robbery before going on to become one of the most famous outlaws of the Depression era. He was paroled in 1929, went back to robbing banks, and was eventually shot and killed by federal agents in Ohio in 1934. The FBI called him Public Enemy Number 1. He had started his criminal career in a Jefferson City cell. Fact 9. Sonny Liston learned to box inside the Missouri State Penitentiary, and he became world heavyweight champion. Liston arrived in 1950, illiterate, one of 17 children with almost no skills. A Catholic priest named Father Alois Stevens introduced him to boxing in the prison gym. Liston was paroled in 1952. In 1962, he knocked out Floyd Patterson in the first round to become world heavyweight champion. The man who became one of the most feared fighters in boxing learned his craft in a Jefferson City prison. Fact 10. Emma Goldman, the woman the U.S. government called the most dangerous anarchist in America, was held in the Missouri State Penitentiary. Goldman, described by the federal government as the ablest and most dangerous anarchist in the country, was incarcerated at the prison's women's ward. She served nearly 2 years before being deported to Russia in 1919. While incarcerated, she continued to agitate among the women prisoners, to the point that prison administrators were relieved to see her go. She is credited as an influence on the founders of both Planned Parenthood and the American Civil Liberties Union. If you're not subscribed yet, take 10 seconds and do it now. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. There is more of this coming. Fact 11. Lincoln University in Jefferson City was founded by Black Civil War veterans. In 1866, 1 year after the Civil War ended, the men of the 1st Missouri Regiment of Colored Infantry, who had fought for the Union, pooled their own money and founded a school for freed black people. They named it Lincoln Institute, after the president who had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It eventually became Lincoln University, a full public university, and it is one of the only historically black universities in America that was founded by the soldiers who fought to make its existence possible. Fact 12. Jefferson City's first state capitol building burned to the ground in 1837, just 11 years after it was built. A second capitol was built and opened in 1840. That building survived until 1911, when lightning struck and sparked a fire that gutted it. The current Missouri State Capitol, the third one, was completed in 1917. The building that now stands took several decades of disaster and replacement to arrive at. Fact 13. The current Missouri State Capitol contains murals by Thomas Hart Benton, considered among the most important American paintings of the 20th century. Benton completed a social history of Missouri on the walls of the House Lounge in 1936. The murals depict Missouri history through farming, industry, slavery, and political corruption, including a portrait of a corrupt politician some believe was modeled on a sitting governor. Controversial when unveiled, they are now recognized as a masterwork of American regionalist painting. They are in a state capital that most Americans have never visited. Fact 14. Jefferson City is one of only 4 state capitals in the United States not served by an interstate highway. Interstate 70 passes 30 miles north through Columbia. U.S. highways connect Jefferson City to the rest of the state, but no interstate runs directly through it. The other capitals in this situation are Pierre, South Dakota, Dover, Delaware, and Juneau, Alaska. Jefferson City shares this distinction with a territorial capital, a colonial capital, and the only state accessible by air or sea. Fact 15. The first train heading for Jefferson City crashed, and 28 people were killed before it ever reached the city. In 1855, the Pacific Railroad completed its line between St. Louis and Jefferson City. A special inaugural train carrying the president of the railroad and dozens of dignitaries set off from St. Louis. It never arrived. At the Gasconade River crossing, a bridge pier collapsed under the weight of the train. The engine and several cars plunged into the river. 28 people were killed and 30 were injured. Regular rail service did not begin until the following year, after the bridge was rebuilt. Fact 16. Confederate secessionists set up a rival capital for Missouri in the town of Neosho during the Civil War. Missouri's pro-Confederate governor fled Jefferson City when Union forces took it in 1861, and he convened a rump legislature in Neosho that voted for secession. The Confederate government in Richmond recognized it. Missouri was thus claimed by both sides simultaneously, officially part of the Union and officially part of the Confederacy, making it one of the most divided states in the war. Fact 17. A Missouri governor committed suicide in his office in Jefferson City in 1844. Thomas Reynolds, the 7th governor of Missouri, shot himself in his office at the State House shortly after breakfast on February 9, 1844. The act was never publicly explained, and historians have attributed it to political pressure, personal despair, and illness. His death led directly to the establishment of Missouri's first mental health institution in nearby Fulton. The cause of that institution was a governor who died by his own hand in the state capitol. Fact 18. The city of Sedalia tried to steal the capital from Jefferson City in 1896. Missouri held a popular statewide vote on whether to move the state capital to Sedalia, which had positioned itself as a more central and economically dynamic location. Jefferson City won the vote and kept the capital, but the fact that the question was seriously put to voters reflects how tenuous the city's status has always felt. Jefferson City has never fully shed the feeling of a place that exists because a decision was made for it, not because it earned its position organically. Fact 19. Jefferson City has a neighborhood called Old Munichburg, settled by German immigrants. 200 years ago, Germans from the Bavarian town of Munichburg settled in Jefferson City in the early 1800s, and they established a community south of downtown that still carries their name. The Missouri Rhineland, the wine-producing region along the Missouri River east of Jefferson City, grew from the same German immigration wave. German settlers planted vineyards on land that reminded them of the Rhine Valley, and the Missouri wine industry that exists today traces directly to their arrival. Jefferson City is the western edge of that wine country. Fact 20. Lewis and Clark passed the bluff where Jefferson City now stands in 1804, more than 15 years before the city existed. The core of discovery was paddling upriver into the unknown continent, recording everything they saw. They noted the bluff on the south bank of the Missouri River, and then they moved on. 15 years later, the Missouri legislature looked at that same bluff and decided to put a capital city on it. What Lewis and Clark recorded as a geological feature became the seat of state government. Fact 21st. Daniel M. Boone's son laid out the streets of Jefferson City. Daniel M. Boone, son of the famous frontiersman, was commissioned, along with Major Elias Bancroft, to survey and plan the new capital city in 1821. The younger Boone had grown up in Missouri. His father had moved the family there from Kentucky in the early 1800s. He was a natural choice for laying out roads in wilderness terrain. The grid of streets in Jefferson City was drawn by a man whose father was the most famous pioneer in American history. Fact 22. The Missouri State Penitentiary was 100 years old before Alcatraz ever received its first federal prisoner. Alcatraz opened as a federal penitentiary in 1934. The Missouri State Penitentiary had been operating since 1836. By the time Alcatraz became known as the most feared prison in America, Jefferson City Prison had already been running for a century, and it had earned a reputation for violence that Alcatraz never matched. Fact 23. A United States Navy nuclear submarine is named after Jefferson City. The USS Jefferson City, a Los Angeles-class fast attack submarine, was commissioned in 1992 and named for Missouri's state capital. It served in active duty for decades, operating in waters that are about as far from a small Midwestern river town as geography allows. A nuclear submarine carries the name of a city that cannot be reached by interstate highway. Fact 24. The prison's presence in Jefferson City prevented the state university from being built there. When the legislature debated where to locate the University of Missouri, Jefferson City was under consideration. The presence of the state penitentiary made it unattractive. Few wanted a university next to the state's most dangerous prison. The university went to Columbia instead, 30 miles north. Jefferson City got the prison, Columbia got the university, and eventually became the more dynamic city. The governor's plan to stabilize Jefferson City through the prison worked against the city in ways he never anticipated. Fact 25. Jefferson City is the seat of government for a state of 6 million people, and most of those people have almost nothing to do with it. The city's economy is dominated by state government, healthcare, and education. It has no major sports franchise, no nationally recognized cultural institution, and no highway that runs directly through it from either coast. It sits on a bluff above the Missouri River between Kansas City and St. Louis, equidistant from both and overlooked by both. It is the official center of a state whose cultural and economic gravity pulls in every direction except toward it. The history that happened here, in the prison, in the Capitol, at the river landing, is not nothing. It is, in fact, extraordinary. It just happened in a place that the rest of the state and the rest of the country decided not to pay attention to. That is what this channel is here to fix. Subscribe before you leave. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. What Jefferson City fact hit hardest? The best ones always come from people who've actually been there.